Hi, welcome to Talking Books and Stuff, the program that talks all about books and writing and stuff. Here's your host, Dennis Rimmer.
And hello once again, this is Talking Books and Writing and Stuff. I'm your host, Dennis Rimmer. With us today we have from back Ontario way, Dr. Dave Williams. So, sir, thank you very much for being with us today.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Now, just looking at your background, it's an astronaut, aquanaut, a pilot, ER doctor, scientist, CEO, and best-selling author. So is it safe to say you're a bit of an underachiever?
I just like keeping busy, and it's been a lot of fun writing. I've really enjoyed collaborating with different authors and also writing my memoir, Defying Limits.
Dave Williams, Dr. Dave Williams is here with us. We're talking about, among other things, the latest book, Leadership Moments from NASA. It's from ECW Press. So what, in your opinion, is a leader?
Well, I think the simplest way to think about a leader is somebody that's able to influence other people, hopefully to do very exciting things. And in the book that I wrote with Elizabeth, we really tried to capture the different leadership moments in NASA's history, but more importantly, the key leaders that were involved in making the decisions that enabled NASA to succeed and go on to achieve the impossible.
Now, I saw a quote the other day that said, true leadership is measured in what you do for those around you. Would that kind of tie in with your philosophy?
Well, there's no question. I think most organizations were away from the so-called hero model of leadership, where you've got one person at the top that's directing everybody like an orchestra conductor. It's really all about teamwork, and one of the common themes throughout the whole book is the importance of communication, building peak performing teams, continued mentorship in the organization, and just creating an environment where people can flourish.
And Leadership Moments from NASA is a book written by Dr. Dave Williams with Elizabeth Howell, also a PhD. I just flipped it open today right here, and this is what I came up with. The flight was extremely normal for the first 36 seconds, says Pete Conrad. So what was that all about?
Well, shortly afterwards, I believe they were referring to the time when the Apollo rocket was hit by lightning shortly after liftoff. But, it's one of the things that's interesting about the space program is operationally things change very quickly, and the leadership and the teams that are supporting the space flights have to be able to deal with that. So in the case of mission control, we have flight directors, and the flight director is working with all of these extremely competent engineers. But to be able to solve real-time problems, the team has to bring their best competency to the situation and be able to make rapid decisions to come up with successful resolution.
And we're talking with Dr. Dave Williams about leadership moments from NASA. He's been in space, you've been under the water. Which one did you like best?
Well, they're both fantastic. Being in space, you look back at this amazing planet that we all live on. I think the phrase global village is really quite appropriate because we orbit the planet every 90 minutes with a sunset and a sunrise every 45. But there's no borders between countries that you can see from space. And quite clearly, we're all in this together. And, if COVID is underscored one thing, it's the fact that what happens in one part of the world happens throughout the whole planet. And arguably the solution that we found with COVID, developing the vaccines, was a result of international collaboration between scientists, and that's one of the greatest lessons of the International Space Station.
Now, how far up is the space station?
It's about 350 kilometers, and it's continually orbiting the Earth. It's really quite amazing being on board the station, looking back at the planet, especially when you're outside doing a spacewalk.
And you were set the Canadian spacewalk record. So actually, how long was that you're out there just tethered by a thin little thread to the station?
Well, it was a total of 3 spacewalks, and I think over 17 hours, 47 minutes around there. And to me, spacewalking is really the epitome of teamwork. We think of the two spacewalkers that are outside, but in reality, we're supported by a team of other astronauts on board the space station and a team of fantastic flight controllers and mission control as well. So it's all about working with large groups of people to enable us to succeed.
So Dr. Dave Williams is with us, astronaut, aquanaut, ER doctor, among many other things, and author. So we're talking about leadership moments from NASA especially, but overall, why do we actually need leaders?
I think leaders are important first to set the vision for where organizations are going. And without a vision, it's hard to have a destination. So the first element is setting the vision, building the team that one needs to be able to achieve the objectives, and then creating an environment where the team members are able to make a difference. And the important lessons from NASA are, hire the best people that you can get, train them to be better through mentorship and ongoing training, and listen to them when they make recommendations on what needs to be done in the organization. So it's really an environment in which there's continuous communication between the leaders in the organization, the people who are working in the organization.
So let's put it to a hockey level, let's say. So we're talking a lot of players. You hear them talk about player coaches or coaches that can they listen to the players. They don't just say, okay, this is what we're going to do on a 3-on-2. You go here and you go there, and don't ever deviate from my plan. So what you're saying basically is that somebody would come up and say, hey, coach, instead of doing it that way, why don't we do it this way? And your definition, I guess a coach would listen and go, that's not a bad idea, let's try it. Or, well, yeah, I thought of that too, but here's why we didn't do it. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, if you accept the premise that leadership is all about influence, then you realize that there's all sorts of influence that's going on in any organization. Traditional leadership might be thought of as a downward direction, the coach speaking to the team, leading the team, etc. Followership is what we call upward influence, where members of a team would influence the leader by their comments and feedback and suggestions. And then, of course, there's peer-to-peer influence, which often people think of as negative, but athletic teams are a great example of how peer-to-peer influence can be really positive and be able to get the team motivated to go on and succeed as a group.
Why, or actually how, what's my question here, is how did you and Elizabeth Powell actually co-write this book? Like, what was the process involved with writing leadership moments from NASA?
I first met Elizabeth when she was publishing her book, Canadarm in Collaboration, and she'd asked me to write the foreword. And of course, we started talking about other ideas, and I had a book for leadership at NASA, an idea for a book like that, and she had an idea for a book on space medicine. So we said, well, why don't we just collaborate on both of them? So what we did was draw up a broad outline of the book, divided the chapters. She wrote about half the chapters, I wrote the other half. And it's interesting when you're writing together with someone to achieve the common voice. So needless to say, once we each did our own parts, we then got together and went through the whole book a number of times to edit it for flow, consistency, the common voice, and to be able to share some of our passion and excitement for leading.
And this is talking books and writing and stuff, so we always talk about the different processes involved in writing a book. So how long actually was it from start to finish before it came off the presses, so to speak?
Well, we started this during the pandemic. It was May of last year we really kind of got going with the outline for the book. And I ended up interviewing many of the former leaders that I worked with when I was at NASA. And it was a very interesting process because we were writing in parallel with doing the interviews. And I would say by September, October, we were finished the first draft. And then, of course, you get into the teamwork of writing a book. A lot of people think that it's just the sole author writing the book. Well, we all know that, again, great books come from great teams of people working together because you've got the editors, the copy editors that are going through it, the content editors, etc. And we went through that editorial process last fall into about January, February of this year, and then the final phase of producing and printing the book.
And we're talking with Dr. Dave Williams. The book is Leadership Moments from NASA. What, as a child, led you to your, well, I was going to say career, but various careers? What did you do when you were 10 and 11 and 12 that led you to where you are today?
Well, I was very much an average kid. I really enjoyed getting out in the wintertime, playing road hockey, etc. But one of the things that captured my interest in the space program was watching Alan Shepard lift off to go into space in May of 1961. It was around 11 days before my 7th birthday. And of course, how can that not capture the imagination of everyone? So I looked at that and said, I want to be able to do that. I want to go and fly in space. And many years later, I was selected as one of the Canadian astronauts and had a chance to have my dream come true. But never did I think in my wildest imagination that I would not only fly in space, but be part of the senior management team at NASA.
And you became a doctor along the way, of course. How'd that happen?
Well, when I was first thinking about becoming an astronaut, I was told that was impossible. So then I dreamt of becoming an aquanaut, living and working underwater on an undersea research habitat. I started scuba diving when I was 12. That required me to learn all about how the body works, which then led me to become very interested in human physiology. So I did an undergraduate degree in that area and then went on to medical school because I was very interested in not only how the body worked, but how to be able to help people who are suffering from illnesses and injuries. And ended up as an emergency doctor in Toronto, which I think helped getting into the space program.
Now, being an ER doctor, you have to obviously think quickly on your feet and make decisions that you hope are the best ones, but also at the same time you've got a big team that you're working with.
There's no question, particularly as a trauma team leader, you've got a whole group of other physicians and nurses, healthcare professionals everyone is dedicated to making sure that the individual, the patient is going to be able to survive and recover from the experience. And the teamwork, that we use in emergency medicine is very similar to the teamwork that we would use spacewalking or in any of these operational environments that we refer to. The operational word talks about environments where you have to make time-critical decisions that can have potentially life or death consequences. And once you make the decision, you can't take it back. You can only reverse it with other decisions. And that's why we tried to capture the important leadership principles on how to work in those environments in the book.
Now we go back talking with Dr. Dave Williams about leadership moments from NASA, and I hope I'm not getting too off the field here, but we go back to that space shuttle disaster, the shuttle that blew up and after 87 seconds or something, and it was apparently traced to an O-ring problem, but I guess if everybody was on the same page, that problem wouldn't have happened, or is that just one of those things, that one in a million thing?
We talk about both the loss of Challenger and the loss of the Space Shuttle Columbia in the book. And with the Space Shuttle Challenger in 1986, technically, correct, it was the O-ring that failed. There was a burn through the primary O-ring and the secondary O-ring that caused the solid rocket booster to fail, and we lost the vehicle and crew. However, there are many other aspects to what happened in Challenger, what we might call human factors, decision-making behind all of this. And after the loss of the vehicle, Diane Vaughan, who's a social scientist at MIT, wrote a book called The Normalization of Deviance, and pertaining to the Challenger disaster. And essentially that's what happened in the organization. Large organizations, sometimes there's a bit of scope creep. We had seen a blow through the O-rings before. The decisions were made to continue to launch the shuttle while NASA was investigating the problem with the O-ring. But the day that Challenger was launched, it was an extremely cold temperature at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. There were a number of people who felt that the best thing to do would be to delay the launch and launch at a different time, and yet the decision was made to go forward. So we talk about that in the book to illustrate the importance of communication in organizations, to be able to listen. We talk about speaking up in organizations. We do want people to speak up, but it's important that leaders also listen up and make sure they understand the messages that are being communicated.
And Dr. Dave Williams is with us, Leadership Moments from NASA. So do you see cultures, corporate cultures, for example, slowly changing? Because I know what you're saying. In my day, it was, the boss was the boss and everybody else had to toe the line, or my way or the highway kind of thing. But now I'm seeing lots of posts and people saying things like the best boss is the kind who lets people achieve their goals or do their best and guides them in the right direction, as opposed to just the heavy-handed, slave driver kind of thing.
Yeah, there's so many different aspects to corporate culture and leadership. Great leaders don't take yes for an answer. That's actually the title of another book that I read a while ago. And it's very true. As a CEO or running an organization or a senior leader, you actually want to have dialogue, discussion to make the best possible decisions. And that's one of the key elements of leadership at NASA. But corporate culture, that's a whole other story that we talk about in the book. And NASA is a great organization that has a very vibrant corporate culture. People are very proud to work in the space program. But if you want to change the culture of an organization, you can't just go in and change the culture. You have to understand what the values are in the organization, look at the value system, and then be able to engage the team members in the organization about the values of the organization, change the values, and changing the culture will follow.
And I guess also have an atmosphere where saying no is accepted when the boss or whomever suggests something, and then an underling or an employee would say, well, no, I don't think that's right. So is that kind of what we're driving at here?
Yes, you definitely want to be able to have dialogue, and everybody's a member of the team. And I think what's really critical is if someone in the organization doesn't agree with the direction the organization is going, for leadership, the senior management team or whoever's in charge of the team, to ask questions about why do you feel the way you do. Let's have a discussion about what the best course of action might be. But simply dismissing individuals that disagree, I think, is a loss for organizations, because often if we have a dialogue, we can come up with a better outcome.
I wish I'd had these lessons back when I was working in corporate radio, so it might have helped me get along a bit better with some of the people that I kind of disagreed with at the time, but we'll leave that to another day. Dr. Dave Williams is with us. Leadership Moments from NASA is the book. What do you hope people will take away from reading this book? And again, I guess on the same line, why should they read it?
There are a lot of books on leadership out there, and I know because over the course of my leadership career, I've read many of them. And I think one of the things for everyone to think about is that we're all on a leadership journey. And not everyone is necessarily a CEO of an organization, but no matter where we are, I think in our lives, we do try and influence other people to be able to do meaningful things. And whether you're the coach of the soccer team or you're interested in learning about leadership as part of your career and you're working in an organization, there are a lot of lessons in Leadership Moments from NASA that resonate through any different leadership style. And yes, it focuses a lot on the space program because we're using examples of leadership that relate to flying in space, but the lessons are transferable between organizations.
And what do we do when we have bad leaders? And a few names come to mind. We won't talk about them, but there's leaders who seem to take people in the wrong direction. So is there a way to combat that?
Well, typically there's processes in place to be able to manage leaders that are taking the organization in the wrong direction. So, for instance, when I'm a CEO, everybody in the organization thinks, well, I'm the ultimate boss. Well, in fact, I report to a board, and there's a board chair, and the board governs my performance. They evaluate me, and they decide whether or not I'm taking the organization in the right direction. They, of course, become informed through 365-degree reviews, or 360 reviews, I should say, where people are reviewing what we're doing. We do an annual performance evaluation like that, and they're the ones that are able to make the decision. So no matter who you are as a leader, you always tend to have a boss, and those bosses need to hold us accountable to be able to perform properly.
We're talking with Dr. Dave Williams, Leadership Moments from NASA. Just about ready to wrap things up here, but one more question. What happens in space when you sneeze?
There's really no propulsive, effective sneezing. You simply say, excuse me, and somebody will probably say, bless you. But other than that, it's really not very dramatic, especially if you're in your space suit outside during a spacewalk. Really nothing happens. You sneeze and that's it. And on you go with your work.
So the particles just kind of hang around with you? Is that what happens?
Well, both places, there are fans to circulate the air. The sound of space is really the sound of fans, because you need that continuous air circulation to replenish the oxygen that you're breathing.
Gotcha. Well, thank you very much. Dr. Dave Williams has been with us, astronaut and former director of space and life sciences at NASA, also an aquanaut, ER doctor, the list goes on and on. Leadership Moments from NASA by Dr. Dave Williams and Elizabeth Howell, PhDs. Thank you very much, sir.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thank you for visiting with us today. This is Talking Books and Stuff with Dennis Rimmer. Contact him at dennis@talkingbooks.tk. Thank you, and may all the good news be yours. Oh, and don't forget to check out his book, The Great Canadian Notebook, available across Canada and at amazon.ca.